see you guys in the dark.
We cannot be held responsible for damages caused by shopping carts. That's what the sign says above the cart corral in the middle of the parking lot. I love that sign. That means that I could hit stuff with the shopping carts. Nah, I'm just kidding. I would never do anything like that. Hi, my name is Jimmy. Nice to meet you. I'm the cart guy here at Barnaby's. There's a real name for my job, but I can't remember it. Anyways, I live in a beat-up mobile home in a trailer park not far from here, but that's not important. I've been at Barnaby's about 3 years now, doing the same thing every single day that I work. I don't mind though. I get to meet all kinds of interesting people and hear all kinds of interesting stories. Most people are nice, but sometimes you get the occasional butthead. Anyways, I found all kinds of cool stuff that people leave behind in the shopping carts. Wallets, purses, pacifiers, shoes, umbrellas. Hell, one time, someone even left their kid in a cart. How the hell do you forget your kid? Anyways, they came back a few minutes later, picked up the kid like it was no big deal. I just don't understand people. At all. They gave me $5 though for watching the little guy. Don't tell Mr. Barnaby, because we're not allowed to accept tips. Anyways, all the important stuff that I always turn into the office. But the little stuff, I take home with me. I've got a huge collection in a big box in my closet, but that's not important either. I'm sure I'm not the first to tell you, Barnaby's is a very old store. Our shopping carts are still made of plastic, not metal like the new ones. They're all cracked and missing pieces. Somebody's going to hurt themselves one day, I know it. Anyways, I'm a huge animal lover. I love all animals. Dogs, cats, fish, birds, things like that. I'm not too big on bugs, though. Not too many people are. I volunteer at least 20 hours a week at the local ASPCA. Now for you that don't know what the ASPCA stands for, or even what it is, it stands for American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. It's an organization that helps neglected, mistreated, and abused animals, and has for over 150 years. Anyway, Mr. Barnaby said that he's looking for stories about horrible and weird events that's happened here. Well, this isn't weird or freaky or anything. It's just horrible. Anyways, it was last summer, the day after Tommy found that dead body in that ice cream thingy. But that's a different story. It was really hot that day. Now, I always keep a bottle of water in my back pocket to drink, so I don't get dehydrated and pass out. Anyways, it's around 3 p.m., the end of my shift. I was gathering my last run of carts when I saw a group of people standing over by an old beat-up Chevy. There was an older woman on her cell phone, a big burly trucker guy, and a young couple standing there looking inside the car. The woman was obviously upset, as she was yelling at the person on the other end of the call, then hung up on him. I went over to see what was going on, the curious guy that I am. What I saw in the backseat of the car got my blood boiling. I was mad as hell. It was a little dog, a little fuzzy dog, passed out in the back seat, his tongue hanging out of his mouth, and he was breathing really heavily. I knew that he wasn't going to make it, unless somebody did something. All the windows in the cars were rolled up, and the car was locked. It had to have been at least 120 degrees in there. What kind of moron does this to a dog? Everyone was just standing there, talking about what to do. I knew what I had to do. Bust the damn window out. Anyways, I took off my shirt, wrapped it around my fist, and punched right through the back driver's side window. The shirt really didn't help, though, as the glass cut my hand and wrist pretty good. There was blood dripping everywhere, but I really didn't care about that. I cleared the glass from around the window and reached in the car and grabbed the little guy. His body was limp. He was still breathing, though, so that was a good sign. His eyes were rolled back into his head, and he was whining a little bit. I knew that I had to act pretty fast. I laid him on the grass, as it was cooler than the concrete. I took the bottle of water out of my back pocket and dumped it, a little bit at a time, on top of him, rubbing it into his fur to bring his body temperature back down. After a minute or so, he started to come back to life. I picked him up and was holding him as he licked my face. Anyways, just then, I heard an angry voice come from behind me. "What did you do to my car?" The dog went from sweet and lovable to vicious and mean in 2 seconds flat. He was barking and growling, going pretty crazy. I turned around to see a guy, about mid-30s, wearing an old, dirty, nasty clothing. He looked like he hadn't bathed since Jesus walked the earth. And smell. Oh my God, did he smell. He smelled like old sweat, dirt, and feet. Anyway, without saying a word, the trucker guy just hauled off and punched the guy dead straight in his face, knocking him back a couple of steps. He was bent over, holding his face. The dog became calm at this point. As the guy stood up, I could see that his nose was completely broken. There was blood pouring out, all over his mouth, his chin, and his clothing. He took a step forward and swung at the trucker guy. I later found out that his name was Dave. Anyways, the guy threw a punch and missed. What happened next looked like something out of Monday Night Raw. I love wrestling, by the way. Anyway, Dave hit him in the chest, scooped him up, and body slammed him straight through the windshield of his own car. It was great. The guy just laid there, spread all over his front seat. Glass and blood was everywhere. Dave reached in, grabbed him by the shirt, and dragged him back out of the windshield, the broken glass cutting his arm and his legs. He was kicking and screaming and cursing. Dave, dragging him over to the back of his semi, opened the trailer door and punched him again, threw him into the trailer. He locked the door and shouted, "Now you're going to know what it feels like." The guy screamed and kicked on the trailer door for a few minutes, and then stopped. Dead silence. Dave reached into his shirt pocket, pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and then walked back to where we were all standing. The cops arrived about 20 minutes later and attempted to get our statements. They asked us what happened. We all just played stupid. I don't know, was the collective response. Dave walked over to let the guy out of the truck. As he did, the guy fell face first out of the trailer, landing hard on the concrete. He was bleeding, sweating, and gasping for air. He definitely deserved it. The cops took the dog, the damaged car, and the guy laying on the ground. He then looked at us, smiled, put his notepad back into his pocket, and walked away. The paramedics showed up, tending to my hand, which wasn't that bad at all. Just a couple minor cuts. They tended to the guy. After the cops arrested him for cruelty to animals, they put him in the back of the ambulance. They accidentally, or on purpose, hit him in the head a couple of times at the top of the door frame. That was pretty hilarious. Anyways, they loaded him up and left. The cops left as well. Dave shook my hand, then hopped into his truck and rolled on. The lady and the couple got in their cars and left as well. I was left just standing there, holding the dog. Since it was the end of my shift, I carried the little guy inside, punched out for the day, and took him home with me. I introduced him to my other dog, Roscoe. Anyways, I decided to name him Enos. Get it? Roscoe and Enos. Dukes of Hazzard. Never mind, it's just an old TV show. They seem to get along just fine. They just hang out and play in my yard. Anyways, the cops from the other day came by the store a couple of weeks later. He said that the guy was found guilty of intentional animal cruelty, fined $5,000, and is now serving 3 years in prison. That definitely serves him right. His car still sits in the parking lot. The birds now use it for target practice, and they definitely don't miss. Back in the late 70s, my parents and I moved into a neighborhood in a town 3 states away from the state that we lived in before. I was about 12 at the time. Our new house was big, 2-story, 3-bedroom house, much larger than our previous house. The neighborhood was small, but the backyards were huge. Plenty of room to play in. A few days after moving in, our new neighbors, the Robinsons, as well as their daughter Tanya, stopped by to say hello, welcomed us to the neighborhood, and informed my parents about a situation that had been occurring throughout the town. Tanya and I were sent upstairs, as that was adult talk and not to be heard by children. We secretly sat at the top of the stairs listening, as we all did as children. They told my parents was that there have been multiple children that have went missing over the past few years. Law officials were baffled by the situation and to keep a close eye on their son, me, just like they do with their daughter. Now let me tell you about Tanya. Tanya was a unique child, a year younger than me, She was quiet, slightly introverted, a little off, and totally infatuated with flowers. She had a giant flower bed in the Robinsons' backyard. It was full of all kinds of big, beautiful flowers. Occasionally, actually quite often, I could see her out of my bedroom window. As I was rocking out to the latest Kiss album, she would be playing Duck Duck Goose and other childhood games around the flower bed with some of the neighborhood children. Well, assume that they were the neighborhood, as I didn't get out much. It was never the same kids twice, though. Anyways, the funny thing about it was, after every time she had friends over, I could see her through the bedroom window, late at night, tending to her flowers, singing songs, and dancing around the flower bed. I chalked it up to her uniqueness at first. Then I started to notice that every morning after the visits, the flower bed got a little bit bigger, and soon after, another big flower appeared. I started to avoid Tanya at that point. Anyways, this went on for about a year and a half, until her flower bed practically consumed the whole backyard. I wanted to tell my parents, but I had no proof, and Tanya freaked me out a lot. Then one day, the Robinsons and Tanya just disappeared. Vanished. They left behind their car, all their belongings, and even the flower bed. The house sat vacant for a couple of years after that. All of Tanya's big, beautiful flowers survived for a couple of months, then died altogether. I kind of felt bad. I watered them a couple of times, but I really didn't know how to care for them, and I still don't. Anyways, I guess the town took over ownership of the property, eventually, because one day I came home from school and saw a moving truck, several police cars, and a pool installation vehicle in the driveway. Apparently someone bought the house and planned to put a pool in there where the flower bed was. A couple days later, newspaper articles revealed that the pool company began digging up the flower bed and discovered the skeletal remains of an adult male, an adult female, and over 50 remains of small children buried underneath the flower bed. DNA later identified the remains of those David Robinson, adult male, Denise Robinson, adult female, and many of the children reported missing over the last 5 years. Tanya was never found, nor was she ever seen again. Well, my last statement isn't actually true. My name is Donovan Mitchell. I'm a longtime customer here at Barnaby's. I've been shopping here for years. Let me tell you, Barnaby's is a very, very old store. I love it here. The prices are good, and you get a nostalgic feeling just walking through the door. Not to brag or anything, but I just celebrated my 22nd anniversary with my wife, Jillian, a couple of days ago. I overheard a couple of the workers talking about strange and unusual things that have happened here, and that the owner is looking for stories about such things. I don't know if this fits into that category. Hell, I don't even know if I'm going to give it to him. What do you think? Anyways, I woke up a couple days ago, found my honey-do list sitting in the counter on the kitchen. It's my day off, and my wife had to be at work at 8. So I got to run errands. For those of you that don't know what a honey-do list is, it's a list that's usually given to a man by his wife, his girlfriend, or significant other, whatever the case may be, of certain things that need to be completed during that day. Anyways, I got my list, drank my coffee, drank more coffee, then decided to get started. The list wasn't that big. It shouldn't take me very long. Or at least I thought. Maybe an hour or two. I'd still have plenty of time to catch the highlights of the Eagles game last night. Anyways, I changed the light bulb on the porch, mailed Aunt Betty's birthday present, and unclogged the drain in the bathroom. For as much hair as I pulled out of the drain, my wife should be bald by now. Anyway, I completed my list, except for one thing. Pick up a few things from the grocery store. I thought, what better place to go than Barnaby's? So I hopped in the car and headed over there. With my list in my hand, I started to gather the items. Eggs, bread, milk, among other things. I couldn't get the lunch meat because the deli was closed due to an incident that happened yesterday. Being that my anniversary was the next day, I decided to pick up a vase of roses while I shopped instead of going to the florist and paying some astronomical price. I figured that I'd go over there real quick and get what I needed, pay for my stuff, and be home in plenty of time to watch the highlights. So I went to the floral section, found the roses, and was standing there deciding which one to choose. When out of the blue, I heard a female voice from behind me. Say, "Welcome to Barnaby's. I'm new here. How may I help you?" I turned around to see a middle-aged woman about 5'3", a little on the chubby side, long black hair, and glasses. She looked vaguely familiar. It didn't hit me until I looked at her name tag. It read Tanya. You scream, I scream, we all scream for, well, you know the rest. Hey, what's up? I'm Tommy. No, not the same Tommy from the deli. Totally different Tommy. Anyways, I work ice cream here at Barnaby's. It's only part-time, but some time is better than no time, right? Besides, I'm going to college to be a nurse. Yeah, that's right, a nurse. Don't judge. It's a noble profession. At least that's what my mother tells me. Anyways, I've been here for about 1.5 years now. It's pretty cool. Get it? Cool. Ice cream? Never mind. I'm bad at telling jokes. I moved out of the LA a few years back and tried my hand at stand-up. Yeah, I ended up doing sit-down. Forget it, I'm done. Anyways, I was sitting at home the other night, bored out of my mind, searching Reddit. I came across all these stories in a set called Barnaby's, an old grocery store. Anyways, I got to thinking, hey, I work at that place. I know a guy named Stuart and a guy named Steven. I remember when Zeke went running through the store with Stephanie. Well, Mr. Barnaby's collection stories I didn't know anything about. Man, nobody ever tells me anything, I swear. I checked this out. I'll turn this into the boss tomorrow. It was last June, the dead of summer. It was hot as hell. It was so hot that Satan called and wanted to borrow some of our heat. Yeah, I tried. Anyways, it was 9 o'clock in the morning. We just got our ice cream delivery. Stuart unloaded it and put it in the ice cream box. That's what we call the freezer. A box. Now, if you're reading all of these stories, like I have, then you know that Barnaby's is a very old store. We still get our ice cream in pallet igloos. For those of you that don't know what a pallet igloo is, it's a large blue insulated box that's mounted on top of a pallet. Some have doors on them, others have thick pieces of plastic hanging down. It helps to keep the ice cream frozen. It kind of resembles one of those porta potties like you would see at an outdoor rock concert. I love rock music. Nickelback rules. Anyways, I grabbed a couple carts and started unloading the igloos. There were 3 of them. I unloaded the first one onto 2 separate carts, took them to the sales floor, and worked them on the shelf. I put all my back stock away. That's all the freight that I couldn't carry on the shelf. We store it in an ice cream box in case we need it later. Anyways, I started unloading the second one. I got about halfway down and saw what looked like a little piece of ice in the back of the box. I didn't think much about it. It's just a freezer, so there's going to be ice, right? Anyways, I moved the next layer of ice cream and discovered what I thought was ice. It was really a fingertip connected to a hand. What the fuck? Curiosity had taken over. I started flinging ice cream out of the box. Now, I like to think myself as a pretty tough guy. I can handle anything, nerves of steel and all that. But what I found in the back of that box made me scream like a little girl. It was a dead body. A frozen dead body. Better yet, a frozen, decapitated, mutilated dead body. There are frozen arms, legs, hands, feet, a head, all of it, all thrown into the back of that box. The blood was mixed with the ice and settled in the bottom of the box. There were ice crystals formed on the parts, which were all frozen together. It looked like a sick game of Twister. It was horrifying. I just stood there, frozen in shock. No pun intended. I didn't even notice that Marcus had walked into the back room till he started vomiting all over the place, repeatedly, breaking me out of my trance. Thank God that none of the customers had saw it. These weirdos would have probably took selfies with the body. Sickos. Anyways, I ran into the break room, called 911 from the payphone. Old store, remember? Marcus went to the bathroom to clean himself up. Anyways, the cops, the coroner, and the forensic team had shown up. It looked like a scene out of CSI Miami. Anyways, the cops took our statements, while the forensic team used little space heaters from aisle 9 and a hammer and chisel to break apart the pieces. As the ice started melting, the pieces started falling out of the box, half frozen, bloody water spilling all over the floor, mixing with the melted ice cream. Stevens had one hell of a mess to clean up. Anyways, the head fell out of the box, and almost rolled through the double doors onto the sales floor. I yelled, "Heads up!" Sorry, I can't help myself. Anyways, the forensic team finished thawing out the pieces and arranged them accordingly to the back room floor. They were all there. The skin was all clammy and wrinkled. The meat hanging off of them looked like soggy ground beef. I got the sudden craving for hamburger. Anyways, it was intense. It smelt like Satan's butt crack. To be honest, this is what made me decide to become a nurse, because after the initial shock, this was quite interesting. The coroner put them in bags, loaded up the truck, and left. The forensic team left as well. The cops took the igloo as evidence. They had to open up one of the loading dock doors and load it into a flatbed tow truck. It fell over twice. Oh crap. It's that late already. I gotta go. I'm late for my class. See ya. 10:15 in progress. Officers respond. We get that call at least once a week. There's always something going on at Barnaby's. My name is Reggie. I'm the town sheriff. I've been for the last 20-something years. Anyways, for those of you that don't know what a 10:15 means, that's the police code for civil disturbance. Now, first and foremost, Barnaby's is an old store. I remember my parents shopping there when I was a child, as their parents shopped there as well. Anyway, my officers and I have responded to many calls to that store, such as fights, freak accidents, alleged intruders, among other things. Over the years, I've become quite friendly with the owner, Pat. He must have excellent insurance to cover all the incidents that have happened here. He mentioned a while back about stories that he's collecting, so I thought I would throw mine into the mix. Now I've served as a Marine for a short period of time, before becoming a sheriff. As a Marine, I've seen my share of blood, guts, and death, both here in the U.S. as well as overseas. But nothing compares to what I encountered one early September morning at Barnaby's. The last time that I was there, before this, I ran into a guy that I went to high school with, Steven something. He found a bag of body parts, but that's a different story. Anyways, I was working the graveyard shift, which I volunteer to do at least once a month. This night just happened to be my night. It's a night that I will never forget. It was about 2 a.m. We had gotten a noise complaint from a civilian in the neighboring housing development. They reported the loud sound of metal to metal coming from Barnaby's. Dispatch announced the call. Here we go again, I said to myself. I notified dispatch that I would be handling the call, flipped on the red and blues, and made my way to the store. I radioed over to the other officer, working the shift with me, and told him to meet me at the store. I arrived first. I did a quick pass around the outside of the building, per protocol, and discovered one of the large metal loading dock doors moving up slowly, then dropping down fast, all on its own, creating the sound that was reported. I parked my car directly in front of them, my headlights shining on the door. The store was closed, so I knew no one should be in there. I informed dispatch that I was on scene and to stand by for further instructions, at which time the other officer pulled up beside me. We looked at each other. I gave him the ready, go signal, and we exited our vehicles. The moment we did, we both heard the sound of tom-tom drums. It seemed to be surrounding us. We drew our weapons and proceeded to walk towards the door. The sound was deafening. I'm sorry about all the details, but as a cop, details are very important. Anyways, we're about 5 feet away from the slamming doors. I announce, "Sheriff's Department, come out with your hands up." No response. The drumming had stopped. Apparently the similar thing happened to Pat a few months back. Anyways, we reached the door and decided that we would have to jump and roll into the back room while the bay door was going up, calculating it just perfectly. I went first. I holstered my weapon. The door went up halfway. I jumped and rolled into the darkened back room, drawing my weapon once again. I motioned for the other officer to come in, a decision I would later regret. Unfortunately, he wasn't so lucky. The bay door went up about halfway. The officer attempted his jump. Just as he landed on the concrete floor, the door slammed down with intense force, crushing his skull and his body underneath it. I knew that he was dead. He left behind a wife and a 4-year-old boy. I had to inform his wife. Anyway, I immediately contacted dispatch through my shoulder mic and called an officer down in need of assistance. Now in complete darkness, I drew out my flashlight, flicked it on so that I could see my surroundings. There was blood splattered all over a stack of pallets, a pallet jack, and the bay door. I said a prayer, then turned and walked slowly through the back room, shining my flashlight left and right. A few times I could have sworn I seen something move from the coolers. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream. The ground started to shake, and every light came on, flickering and buzzing in random patterns. Pallets started flying through the air. Another scream. A phantom wind came and blew me hard against the back wall. Various sorts of debris and cardboard began flying through air. Large pieces of machinery began levitating on their own. The drums began again, louder this time. 2-liter bottles of soda began levitating, then smashing forcefully to the ground, repeatedly. Large shelving began tumbling over, smashing its contents all over. The drumming continued. Every door began opening and then slamming shut. The office door, the cooler doors, even the loading dock doors, repeatedly slamming down on the officer's bloody, mutilated carcass. I screamed, closed my eyes, and unloaded my weapon, a full clip, blinding in any direction. I felt a fear that I've never felt before, not even in the war. I know that I'm going to die. I slid down the wall into a sitting position, opened my eyes, and saw a tomahawk appear out of thin air, whirling fast, coming directly at my head. I screamed once again, and then lost consciousness. I was told days later that members of the town fire department and coroner team found me, about 30 minutes later, shaking, sweating, and mumbling to myself. The entire back room in complete shambles. I don't remember them finding me at all. First thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed 2 days later. Doctor said that besides a few bumps and bruises, I was perfectly fine. I took a couple of days off to try to get my head straight. I still have nightmares sometimes. I don't respond to calls at Barnaby's anymore. Never again, and I never will. I'm not ashamed to say that place scares the bejesus out of me, and I'm a cop. I'm sitting in my patrol car, writing this at the donut shop across the street from the store. 10:15 in progress. Officers respond. No, thank you. Can I try a slice of that? If I had a nickel for every time that I've been asked that question, I could buy my own deli and be my own boss. Anyways, how are you doing? I'm Milani. I'm the new deli manager here at Barnaby's. I've been here for about a week now. I called that 1-800 number that Zeke mentioned in one of his posts, but that's a different story. Anyways, I came in for an interview and Pat, Mr. Barnaby, hired me on the spot, just like that. I guess he liked my resume. You see, I've been working in delis all up and down the East Coast since I was 17. That's all I know. This is my first time at being a manager, though, let alone in a supermarket. This is on a much bigger level. We have a full-size deli, as well as a bakery, a hot bar, and a cake-making station that I'm responsible for. We also fry some chicken. I didn't know this until I got hired here, but Barnaby's is very old. We still have one of those old chicken fryers where you actually have to drop the chicken into the vat, then pull it out with tongs when it floats to the top. There's no basket, no temperature control. You just turn it on and hope that it doesn't explode. Anyways, it's going to be a challenge because I've always worked a little mom and pop shops before this. For those of you that don't know what a mom and pop shop is, it's a small business. Usually one establishment owned by an older couple. Usually. So far, the people that shop here are friendly. Although you do get that one customer every now and then that makes you want to say bad words. Sometimes you even make up a few. Anyway, I heard from a couple night crew guys that Mr. Barnaby is looking for stories about weird and horrible events that have happened here. He was off the day that this happened. Anyways, a couple days ago, I arrived to work about 6:55 a.m., punched in, did my morning paperwork, then headed to the department. I turned on the lights, put the slicer back together, and started the ovens. I saw a note on the board from the closer saying that there was an order for 16-piece chicken meal to be picked up by noon. Okay, no problem. Other deli associates started arriving as scheduled, and we opened the deli at 8. Everything was going good. Around 10 o'clock, I turned on the fryer so that it would heat up, hit the exhaust fan, and continued to wait on customers. About 20 minutes went by. The fryer started making a strange buzzing sound and shaking a little. I looked over to see that the grease was boiling, like a pan of water on a stove. I yelled over to Tommy, my assistant, to turn off the fryer and unplug it. Now, as I said, it's a very old fryer. The controls are on the back panel, not on front like the new ones. Anyways, he reached over the fryer vat to turn it off, and as soon as he did, the grease exploded upwards, directly into his face. He screamed and grabbed his face, stepping backwards, knocking over an empty cooling rack, and falling to the floor. I've never heard anyone scream like that before. It was horrifying. Anyways, hot grease was dripping off the fan and the ceiling, which started melting from the extreme temperatures. Tommy stopped screaming. Pieces of ceiling tile started falling to the floor and on top of Tommy, who was passed out from the pain at this point. At least that's what I thought. And the smell. Oh my God, did it smell. It smelled like burnt flesh and chicken. The customers just stood there watching and taking pictures. Those freaks. Anyways, I ran over to him. Now, I probably shouldn't have done this, but I grabbed his wrists and moved his hands away from his face. His skin was melted altogether, and looked like string cheese as I pulled them apart. I turned my head and threw up right on the tray of cherry turnovers. I glazed them up real good. I'm never eating cheese again, that's for sure. Anyways, blood was pouring everywhere. Pieces of flesh started falling off of his face, as well as burnt muscle and tissue, exposing his skeletal bones. His eyes completely burned away. I knew I was wrong. He wasn't passed out. He was dead. One of the other associates ran and called the cops. They showed up and shut the store down. The sheriffs didn't respond. That's a different story, though. Anyways, the coroner arrived, put Tommy in a bag, and took him away. I couldn't stop crying. I'm starting to tear up right now as we speak. Anyway, the deli's been shut down now for the last 2 days, while the forensic team processes the scene. They say that it should be open again by tomorrow. Anyways, I haven't been able to sleep the last couple of nights because of nightmares. I called a therapist. I'm sitting in her waiting room right now, writing this, waiting to be seen. Oh yeah, by the way, the customer that ordered that chicken meal, they called as we were all leaving. The order was canceled.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.